All right. Good afternoon. Um, Mr. Enriquez and I decided that we were going to pretty much skip the Byzantine and Islamic art and jump right into the medieval period and art of the Middle Ages. But looking back, he made a good point that really kind of uh, ignores some very important historical periods. So I'm going to auction off the Byzantine and Islamic art, and we are going to make our way quickly to art of the Middle Ages, which really doesn't have as much content for you guys to cover. But that's what the quiz at the end will be over, so we do want to make sure we cover it. But I don't want to gloss over the fact that between 500 and 1500, those years, we have this medieval period, this period of darkness going on in Europe. But that's not the only going on. We see, remnants of the Roman Empire influencing many areas of the world. And so we're looking specifically today. We're going to talk really quickly about the Byzantine Empire. We're looking at the time period between 527 and 1453. Again, roughly 500 to 1500. And so we're looking there. The Byzantine Empire is going to be divided into three periods, much like all the other periods we've looked at before. They have sort of a high, middle, and a late, or early, middle, and late, that sort of thing. The early Byzantine art, we're going to see lots of influences from those Greek and Romans. Those reliefs, they have those deep relief images, still using that single plane. If you remember, towards the end of the Hellenistic period, we see the sort of free floating images, but in that early Byzantine art, we see those figures again on a baseline. We see those again, real deep relief images, like high relief. If you remember, the difference between high relief is you can get kind of hands behind it, if you will. It comes out more three dimensionally than a low relief. All of that is that Roman inspired. Influences. When we look at the architecture, and this is one of the things we really want to pay attention to as we look at the Byzantine and Ottoman empires and Islamic art. We're looking at this is Hagia Sophia, and no, I know I butcher the names of most of these. Maybe Hagia Sophia, but for a long time this stood as the longest, the largest church on earth. It's 270 feet long, 240 feet wide. It makes use of this incredible thing that we got from the Romans. Yes, a dome. How'd they do that? Made of concrete. Thank you, Romans. And again, if you came for your DBA, you know a lot about all those domes and arches, things that the Romans brought us that we're going to see influencing art throughout the rest of our class. When we look at the inside, and kind of much like we saw with some of the Greek and Roman designs, and as we'll look further as we kind of jump into the Renaissance going forward, we see this transition to where the outsides of these churches are sort of plain. If we look at this image in the top left, the church doesn't look, it's not golden and shiny, but the interior we look is very ornate, making use of gold leaf and that type of thing. Churches brought in lots of the money in those areas, and so they often had the largest architecture, the most exorbitant use of materials. Byzantine art in Ravenna and Sinai. This is a look at some of the types of art they have. Again, they made use of that Roman cross. When we saw the influence of the Romans, as they started bringing Christianity into their designs, we see continuing into Byzantine, they make use of that cross shape. We see the use of the same type of imagery, symbolism that we saw, and even the same use of materials. These are little mosaics, those little tiles being created. Again, we see that continued influence of that Roman art. Byzantine art made use of that iconoclasm or image breaking. This is one of those persons in possession of images were jailed, or tortured, or even executed for the height of this at the height of this controversy. This is where they were using icons and images in ways that were expressly forbidden, ways you couldn't confuse the message of Christianity. And so, when we see the use of this, image breaking iconoclasm, you're going to see that it being very controversial, just like it would be today when we discuss anything religious. Religion's always been controversial. Here we look at the Middle Byzantine architecture. Again, we see the influences of the domes and so forth from the Romans, but and again the Greek cross plan, Greek and Roman cross plan things coming into and they had that center area that where that reached up into the top with the largest dome and the centerpiece of the structure generally. And we also see again those use of those arches. We see converted columns, very much the same from the Greek and the Romans. Again, lots of use of mosaics, Christian iconography, baseline, relief. We see it advancing, though. You can kind of see as you get into the middle and the late, the imagery becomes much more floaty. Again, they're getting away from that baseline. We're starting to see some of that imagery that you're going to begin to see influencing what comes next as we look at the Renaissance period. And so when we get past the Byzantine, the next little section here, we're going to go directly into Islamic art. And we need to also recognize that when we talk about medieval art and art of the Middle Ages, they're going to specifically focus on Ireland. Well, again, that's very Eurocentric, and it kind of ignores that, hey, there was Asia and other parts of the world. There were a couple of people living in Asia at the time, so they had some stuff going on. Here we're talking specifically about Islam, and Muhammad, the founder of Islam, was born in Mecca in Saudi Arabia, approximately 570. Again, so when we're talking about that period between 500 and 1500, not just medieval period stuff going on, not just knights wandering through a desolate stuff looking for a golden chalice. There's something else going on in the world. And so Muhammad was a prophet who was claimed to be a descendant, direct descendant of Ishmael. If you're familiar with the story of Abraham and Ishmael, and I believe Isaac was the other son, Isaac and Ishmael. And these are this is the founding of Christianity and of Islam. And so, as a direct descendant of Ishmael, Muhammad sort of claims this prophet status and starts this religion, if you will. And when we look at how the Muhammad was able to kind of overtake the Middle East, they discover. I mean, they talk about these as conquering and overrun by the Muslims, and Muslims had most of Spain in control. Most of the areas that Muhammad took his forces into often gave up fairly willingly and welcomed. So as you read about the spread of Islam, you can recognize not all of it was as warlike spread as maybe it's depicted. Some of these areas were very open and willing to welcome Islam across this area. When we look at the art that comes from an architecture, again, we see the dome being used. Now, though, we're seeing this gold on the outside, where the domes themselves and become these very iconic symbols that are sort of bring people to it and make it very visible. We see, again, the use of arches, columns, those influences of Greek and Roman architecture that are going to continue throughout. We specifically want to look at some of the, and I want to get to probably the most important one here in just a few minutes, the Taj Mahal. But when we look at the different ways that Islamic architecture continues with these same sorts of traditions. Again, when we look at the interior, we can tell this is not the same as we were looking at with the Romans and the Greeks. We see use of pattern here is different. The window structures are different. We didn't see this sort of repeated window structures, but we do see the same use of the arches. These are the same type of windows. They're just used differently. These are the same sort of types of use of columns. These are just much larger and used a little differently. And so we're looking at how the Islamic world took these architectural styling cues and sort of made them their own. Islamic architecture made use of these big open spaces. And again, if we look at some of the architecture we're going to see coming up, particularly as we look at the Renaissance period in Italy, we're going to see these same sorts of influences now continue into the next. So just recognize the influences of these architectural and artistic styling cues fluctuate, and they go back and forth. Everybody learns something from somebody else. And so we're going to see these big, large courtyards and so forth become a very classic design that continues into the Romanesque period, of and Italian periods coming up. I want to get real quickly to, and so one of the things we're going to look at in the Taj Mahal as well is how not only did this Islamic architecture make use of, these same sorts of Roman and Greek influences. The things they did and adaptations they did were, these very tall, and they made use sometimes of Roman works that were already there, and just made minarets that were different than what was there to begin with. They very often would, when they construct their buildings, go higher. When we look at a lot of the Greek and Roman, we see elevation, but we don't really see the multiple levels, if you will. And so that's one of the things that kind of becomes unique with some of this later Islamic works. And so again, we're still looking at the interior of these, but one of the things that make the Islamic art is that dedicated use of symmetry. Very often, and this is the Taj Mahal, this is probably the most iconic work of art that you're going to see from this period, and you're going to recognize that no matter what side you're on, all of the minarets are the same. From every angle, it is symmetrical. If we divide it down the middle, it's the same on the left as it is on the right. What's also very unique about the Taj Mahal is it shares a vertical or horizontal, type of symmetry different than most type of symmetrical things we look at. Because it has this reflection pool, we also get a symmetry from the top half of our image, if you will, to the bottom half. As we look at it, with the reflection lets us see sort of what we would call a radial style of symmetry, where it sort of radiates out from the center point. It sort of brings more emphasis to this very, central area here, and again, bringing that emphasis back into the church. All right, guys, that is it for the Ottoman and Byzantine. We're going to go right on into the art of the medieval. This is going to be quick and easy, though, but there is a quiz at the end. And so you're not going to have to take that one, but you are going to take this one at the end of the medieval Byzantine Islamic art. And so art of the Middle Ages, or medieval art, refers to the years between Rome's election of Christianity, and that's kind of where we left off with our Rome, and then as the official state of religion, and beginning of the Renaissance, which we're going to kind of get into very soon. And so we're going to look at how the culture of classic Greek and Rome was sort of continued through. They talk about being reborn, but as you see, it never really died. It's just continued throughout in other different forms. It was during this time that the former citizens of Rome fused with the barbarians, a Latin term for the pre-literate culture, and this foundation for the languages of institution of modern Europe. Oh, let's go back here and look real quick. You're going to want to recognize the stylistic characteristics of the Hiberno-Saxon art, distinguish the stylistic changes between Judaism, Christianity, Islam that represented the religious cultural shifts, and classify artworks within their cultural style, content, and materials. Specifically, you want to be able to talk about the one we're going to be looking at most of the next community quiz is going to be the Christianity aspect of it. But be prepared to I have a few questions about Islam and Judaism as well. Vikings were the most powerful force in Northern Europe during the early Middle Ages. Skilled warriors, sailors, administrators, able to conquer and colonize lands from Greenland to Western Europe to France. These ships were Vikings' military crafts and medium for art. One of the best examples of the uncovered from the burial mound near Osberg, Norway. 70 foot long, once contained a vast treasure. Two women indicate that this on it. The remains of two women indicate this was extravagant burial for Queen Azah of Yingling clan, because one of the women is wearing clothing indicative of wealth and the other one's wearing indicative of lesser status. The remains of 14 horses, ox, 3 dogs also found on the ship. The wooden animal head posed from Osberg ship is a combination of the animal motif and the interlaced pattern characteristic of the age. And so when we look at Celtic patterns and so forth, this is sort of they spring up from these Vikings and what the Vikings did. Again, use of animal imagery and lots of use of interesting and intricate pattern. This Hiberno-Saxon art refers to early medieval art produced on the islands of Ireland, whose ancient name was Hibernia, and Britain, whose primary ethnic group was the Saxons. So again, one of the reasons we kind of want to make sure we look at that Byzantine as Islam is we don't want to just remain Eurocentric and say, hey, everything happened right in and around Europe. Because it didn't. There's other places. In the 7th and 8th centuries, the art flourished into the monasteries of the British Isles, prominently in the illuminated manuscripts. And again, those illuminated manuscripts we saw going all the way back into that late Roman period, where they would use some type of reflective surface very often to create the illuminated look, like the page itself had light springing from it. Most important surviving works of this period are the sculptures of the high crosses that are found in the burial grounds throughout the British Isles and stand as tall as 18 feet high. Early versions of these high crosses contain abstract design, while later varieties have figures in panels. And again, they're talking about some of these are just abstract, and some of these, as you can see here, have figures embossed in them. Again, and this also makes use of very low relief. When we saw the high relief in some of those Byzantine and works of art, this makes use of very low relief. We don't see that. You can kind of get your hands behind, if you would, some of that relief. The High Cross of Merodach from Monastery Boyce. I'm butchering that one. County Louth, Ireland, 923 is common form of high cross, four-sided on a sloping base. The circle that intersects across indicates that it is Celtic. And again, you will become more and more familiar with these Celtic designs. We see them all over the place. Again, it's kind of one of those things that Ireland has influenced the rest of the world with. This makes use of that early Christian figure style with the early medieval animal styles around the Celtic circle. And so what are you going to do? First thing you want to do is completely go back and read, if you haven't, the module. Review your notes, because I know you've been taking notes meticulously the whole time I've been teaching. And complete the Art of the Middle Ages quiz. And that is going to be on the next page. When you click there, you will see... Oh, did I not? Oh, I clicked wrong. At the bottom. There we go. It's a graded quiz about Islamic art. Was that right? Oh. Hold on, I think I went the wrong one. Try that again. There we go, Art of the Middle Ages. This is the graded quiz that you're going to be taking at the end of the day. All right, guys, I hope you learned something and got a little opportunity to recognize that there's more than just the medieval period, but we had a lot of stuff going on in Asia and Islam. And so have a great day. Thanks for playing along.